So in this video, we'll encapsulate the hardest, most important questions we will ever ask ourselves. It is the coda and conclusion of Jordan B. Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, and what I believe to be probably the most practical and important component of this book. So what shall we do with our newfound pen of light? Every day the prayers of desperate people go unanswered, but maybe this is because the questions they contain are not phrased in the proper manner. Perhaps it's not reasonable to ask God to break the rules of physics every time we fail by the wayside or make serious error. Perhaps in such times you can't put the cart before the horse and simply wish for your problem to be solved in some magical manner. Perhaps you could ask instead what you might have to do right now to increase your resolve, buttress your character, and find the strength to go on. Perhaps you could ask instead to see the truth. We're going to start with a short anecdote by Peterson on how he dealt with disagreements with his wife in his marriage. And in fact, I think this sets up a great foundation for people and how they can resolve conflicts and within their interpersonal relationships, and the important questions they can ask themselves within that they often don't, which lead to a spiral of turmoil and chaos and resentment. On many occasions in our nearly 30 years of marriage, my wife and I had a disagreement, sometimes a deep disagreement. We became trapped inside an emotional, angry, and anxious argument. We agreed that when such circumstances arose, we would separate briefly, she to one room, me to another. This was often quite difficult because it's hard to disengage in the heat of an argument, but when anger generates the desire to defeat and win. But it seemed better than risking the consequences of a dispute that threatened to spiral out of control. So number one, separating from each other and giving each other space. Give yourself space. Trying to calm down, we would seek ourselves the same single question: what had we each done to contribute to the situation we were arguing about? However small, however distant, we had each made some error. So we must ask ourselves, what have I done to contribute to the situation and conflict and crisis I'm in? We always look to blame and look to other people. What have they done? He or she has done this. They slighted me. No, what have you done? Flip it back yourself and look in the mirror. The problem with asking yourself such a question is that you must truly want the answer. You can't just ask yourself the question just because you heard someone say it like me or Peterson. You must actually want the answer. And the problem with doing that is you won't like the answer. And so you must learn to appreciate the darker, more malevolent, uglier parts of your character. Embrace them and admit them. So guess what? You know what? I have tendencies for selfishness. I have tendencies for resentment and envy and jealousy, and that's okay. I can reconcile them now that I know that they even exist because I'm not pushing them down through denial. If that's you, that's wrong, and you must change it, then you have to consider yourself, your memories of the past, your manner of being in the present, and your plans for the future. Then you must resolve to improve and figure out how to do that. Then you actually have to do it. That's exhausting. It takes repeated practice to instantiate the new perceptions and make the new actions habitual. But that's life. Tough luck. But it's at such a point that you must decide whether you want to be right or you want to have peace. Most people just want to be right in arguments and conflicts and conversations. Most people just want to talk and get their point of view across and just want to be right. Instead, why don't we just try and find the truth? Or the closest thing to the truth. How about that? You must decide whether to insist upon the absolute correctness of your view or to listen and negotiate. You don't get peace by being right. You just get to be right. And while your partner gets to be wrong, defeated and wrong. Do that 10,000 times and your marriage will be over. Or you will wish it was, because now you're living with a loser. Now you're living with someone who's always wrong. You don't want to do that. No one does. To choose the alternative, to seek peace, you have to decide that you want the answer more than you want to be right. That's the way out of the prison of your stubborn preconceptions. And that's the prerequisite for negotiation. My wife and I learned that if you ask yourself such questions and you genuinely desire the answer, no matter how disgraceful and terrible and shameful, then a memory of something you did that was stupid and wrong at some point in generally not too distant enough past will arise from the depths of your mind. Then you can go back to your partner and reveal why you're an idiot and apologize sincerely. And then you two idiots will be able to talk again because you've admitted how you're wrong. He or she's admitted why they're wrong. And perhaps that is true prayer. The question, what have I done wrong? And what can I do now to set things at least a little bit more right? A little bit aimward up towards good in heaven. But your heart must be open to the terrible truth. You must be receptive to that which you do not want to hear. When you decide to learn about your faults so that they can be rectified, you open a line of communication with the source of all revelatory thought. Maybe that's the same thing as consulting your conscience. Maybe that's the same thing in some manner as a discussion with God. And if you're confused on how to even fathom getting to that place, go back and watch every single rule, all 12 rules that I've analyzed on this channel. That should give you a pathway to find that revelatory thought. And now we get to the crux of this coda, of this conclusion of this book. The hardest, most important questions to ask. Now that we've built the framework and set up the introduction and context to it, what are we going to write with our pen of light? Now that we have all this information, what are we going to do with it? How are we going to learn about ourselves? What are the most difficult, most important questions we need to ask? There are many of them, and I encourage you all to use this, what I'm about to go through, as a exercise, mental exercise for yourself and your life, something that you can perhaps do on a yearly basis. Here's the first one. What shall I do tomorrow? Ask yourself that. What shall you do tomorrow? And it's a general question, but the answer came to Peterson: the most good possible in the shortest period of time. Conjoining an ambitious aim with the demands of maximal efficiency. A worthy challenge, that is. Here's the second question. What shall I do next year? Try to ensure that the good I do then will be exceeded only by the good I do the year after that. So continually trying to elevate yourself every year, doing a little bit more good. How you define good is up to you. We don't need to assimilate other people's definitions of good or evil, or right or wrong. We must find our own. The next question. What shall I do with my life? Now, how the hell are you going to answer that question? You could spend the rest of your life trying to answer that question. But here's Peterson's answer. What shall I do with my life? Aim for paradise and concentrate on today. Aim up towards good. Concentrate on today. And don't get too caught up on the anxiety of the past and the depression of the future. What does all that mean? It means, in Peterson's words, orient yourself properly, then and only then concentrate on the day. Set your sights at the good, the beautiful, the true, and then focus potentially and carefully on the concerns of each moment. Aim continually at heaven while you work diligently on earth. Attend fully to the future in that manner while attending fully to the present. Then you have the best chance of perfecting both. That is what you can do with your life. And now, the next category of questions is to do with relationships. What shall you do, or what shall I do with my wife? What shall I do with my husband? What shall I do with my spouse, my partner? Treat her as if she's the Holy Mother of God so that she may give birth to the world-redeeming hero. What shall I do with my daughter? The world-redeeming hero is the Son. What shall I do with my daughter? Stand behind her, listen to her, guard her, train her mind, and let her know it's okay if she wants to be a mother. What shall I do with my parents? Act such that your actions justify the suffering they endured. Act such that your actions justify the suffering they endured. This is so powerful and important to me. Your parents, our grandparents, our ancestors went through more hell than us. Perhaps we might be one of the first generations in a while that have gone through less hell than our ancestors. We'll see where the world goes in the next 100 years. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll be wrong. But our actions should honor them. To bring light and honor their name. Because without them, we are not here. And I didn't always think like this. I almost had a disdain for my family name. I've thought about changing my name when I was younger. I won't get into reasons why, but I've thought about just putting my middle name and my first name on this channel, and on everything I put on my online presence. And a part of me wishes I should have, just to keep privacy and anonymity, which I do appreciate, but it's done. It's out there. And I'll probably leave it at that. Because maybe I can make something special and honor those that came before me. So what are you going to do for yours? What are you going to do for your family name and for your parents and your parents' parents? How are your actions going to justify their suffering that they endured? And for me, it's every day, every single day, aiming up towards excellence, leaving a trickle leaving a trickle legacy that permeates not just me, but every person I touch through my vocation and through this and through everything I do. What shall I do with my son, though? Encourage him to be a true son of God. But to stand behind my daughter, that's to encourage her in everything she wants to courageously do, but to include that genuine appreciation for the fact that her femininity, and to recognize the importance of having a family and children, and forego the temptation to degenerate or devalue that in comparison to accomplishment of personal ambition or career. To act to justify the suffering of our parents is to remember all the sacrifices that all the others who lived before you, not least your parents, have made for you in all the cause of terrible past, to be grateful for all the progress that has been thereby made, and then to act in accordance with the remembrance of gratitude. People sacrificed immensely to bring about what we have now. In many cases, they literally died for it. And we would act with some respect for the fact. And so every weekend for 2019, I've turned up we have a memorial in Melbourne. It's called 1,000 Steps, Coda Trail. Those who have known the Coda Trail is a famous trail that was walked by Australians, Papua New Guineans, the Japanese during the war. It's supposed to represent the arduous task that these men would walk on to get to certain areas in their environment to fight. They would walk dozens and dozens of kilometers. This 1,000 steps is hard. It's hard for a lot of people if they walk, let alone run. Which I do, not because I'm special, but because I need to suffer. And so it started was just for me. It was just for my own personal growth and just for my own mind. But then it became, oh wow, I was reading the plaque every time I came. Wow, thousands of people have died here. Not here, but it's a memorial. Thousands of people have died in honor of this. Thousands of Australians. And so they've sacrificed immensely to bring about what we have now. And we've become so disconnected from that past. And it's a big tourist attraction. 1 million plus people attend and walk the 1,000 steps every year. It's about 1.4 kilometers. It takes people usually 30 to 60 minutes. And if you're running, it usually take you less. You get to the top, you see nature, you see the plaques. It's like, wow, history. But then you see and observe that, wow, we're so disconnected. How many people just do it to say they've been doing it? And I was doing it at the start. I was just doing it for my own personal growth. I was trying to help. I was still trying to do good. I was still trying to use it to inspire other people to join me. Let's come together as a community. Let's do this together. But I also became disconnected from what it was about. So then I began ritualizing myself in a way to honor the men that have died. And I had my own ritual in how I did that, and just remembering, just in here, if it's nothing else, just having some type of ritual where you remember and you honor the people that came before you. So what does to encourage my son to be the true son of God mean? This is to want him above all to do what is right and to strive to have his back while he is doing so. That is, I think, part of the sacrificial message, to value and support your son's commitment to transcendent good above all things, including his worldly progress, so to speak, and his safety, and perhaps even his life. And so we continue asking more questions. What shall I do with a stranger? Invite him into my house and treat him like a brother so that he may become one. That's to extend the hand of trust to someone so that his or her best part can step forward and reciprocate. That is what trust allows. It allows the best person of another person to manifest. That's to manifest the sacred hospitality that makes life between those who do not yet know each other possible. What shall I do with a fallen soul? Offer a genuine and cautious hand, but do not join in the mire. Do not join them and fall down the cave with them. What shall I do with the world? Conduct myself as if being is more valuable than non-being. Act so that you are not made bitter and corrupt by the tragedy of existence. How shall I educate my people? Share with them those things I regard as truly important, as I am doing now, as I have done for years. That is to aim for wisdom, to distill that wisdom into words, and to speak forth those words as if they matter with true concern and care. That is exactly what is happening right now, and what has happened for years on this channel and on my Facebook and Instagram. What shall I do with a torn nation? Stitch it back together with careful words of truth. We are dividing and polarizing and drifting towards chaos. It is necessary under such conditions, if we are to avoid catastrophe, for each of us to bring forward the truth as we see it, not the arguments that justify our ideologies, not the machinations that further our ambitions, but the stark, pure facts of our existence, reveled for others to see and contemplate, so that we can find common ground and proceed together as one, as a community of Homo sapien human beings. We're not pitting against one another, which disappoints me to no end. What shall I do for my God, my Father? The rot must be revealed before something can be put in its place. There is no enlightened one. There is only the one who is seeking further enlightenment. Proper being is process, not a state, a journey, not a destination. You don't reach samadhi. You just strive for it. It's the continual transformation of what you know through encounter with what you don't know, rather than the desperate clinging to the certainty that is eternally insufficient in any case. Always place your becoming above your current being. That means it is necessary to recognize and accept your insufficiency so that it can be continually rectified. That's painful, certainly, but it's a good deal. Here's the next category of questions. Focus this time on ingratitude. What shall I do when I despise what I have? What do you do? What do you do when you despise what you have? Remember those who have nothing and strive to be grateful. Remember those who have nothing. And one mechanism to do that is travel. That's why travel is so important for people. And it amazes me how many Americans that I've learned. I've been to America many times, and it amazes me how many people I meet and how many people I hear don't have a passport or have never traveled outside America. And America is so amazing to me. United States of America. You know, I have such a connection to it, and I think it's such an amazing country that people don't realize how the rest of the world looks at America. Like people look at America like it's like this is amazing. Like, yeah, people make jokes about it. Yeah, people disdain it in a lot of ways, and they laugh at a lot of the silliness of it. But besides all that, it's like, wow, look at the diversity. Look at the hope. Look at the dreams. Look at where people came from, what they become. Look at how every single state has a different energy and encapsulates a different way of being. It's a beautiful thing. And so traveling helps you see that. So I go see that. I go see all around the world, not just America, all around the world. You know, Asia. I haven't been to South America or Europe yet, but I cannot wait. It shows you that is a gateway. Travel is a gateway to gratitude, because you realize your eyes get opened to a different way of being, a different culture. You see people who have less and more the same, different to you. They think and feel different things, and it's like, oh wait, maybe it gives perspective on your situation. It helps you take stock of what is in front of you. Consider as well that you may be blocked in your progress, not because you lack opportunity, but because you have been too arrogant to make full use of what already lies in front of you. Oh, isn't that true? We've become so used to the pleasures and opportunities around us that was like, why would I take the train into the city? I can drive. Why would I drive when I could take the train? The fact that we can do any of that stuff, we have endless opportunity around us. Yet, we're so arrogant, we take for granted and we don't even use it, and we just like, it becomes so normal. Our hedonic set point, a baseline of adjustment adjusts, and we get used to it. And that's why spontaneous travel and practices of gratitude and appreciation is so important, and why suffering gives us space. Death, pain, trials, tribulations give us space to give gratitude, to maybe not to be arrogant. Maybe death is a way for us to buttress arrogance towards life. Here's a quote. Knowledge frequently results from knowing others, but the man who is awakened has seen the uncarved block. Others might be mastered by force, but to master oneself requires the Tao. He who has many material things may be described as rich, but he who knows he has enough and is at one with the Tao might have enough of material things and have self-being as well. So he may have both, and that's a powerful position to be in. That's conscious. Further questions. What shall I do when greed consumes me? Remember that it is truly better to give than receive. The world is a forum of sharing and trading. To give is to do what you can to make things better. The good in people will respond to that and support it and imitate it and multiply it and return it and foster it so that everything improves and moves forward. So give it a little more. Something that I've really tried to work on recently. Even when you don't want to, just do it. It's probably the right thing to do, and doing the right thing is usually the right thing. What shall I do when I ruin my rivers? Seek for the living water and let it cleanse the earth. The more people sort themselves out, the more responsibility they will take for the world around them, and the more problems they will solve. It is better, proverbially, to rule your own spirit than to rule a city. Everybody wants to rule the city. Everybody wants to rule the world. I used to. It's like, I don't know. What do you want to do? I want to run the world. I'll take over the world. Take over yourself first, young man. Maybe the environmental problem is ultimately spiritual. If we put ourselves in order, perhaps we will do the same for the world. Get your house in order before you decide to clean the world around you or blame the world around you for problems. Fix yourself. What shall I do when my enemy succeeds? Aim a little higher and be grateful for the lesson. Learn from your successes of your enemies. Listen to their critiques so that you can glean from their opposition whatever fragments of wisdom you might incorporate to your betterment. Adopt as your ambition the creation of a world in which those who work against you use the light and wake up and succeed, so that the better at which you are aiming can encompass them too. What shall I do when I'm tired and impatient? Gratefully accept an outstretched helping hand. That is something with a twofold meaning. It's an injunction first to note the reality of limitation and individual being, and second to accept and be thankful for the support of others, family, friends, acquaintances and strangers alike. Exhaustion and impatience are inevitable. There is too much to be done and too little time in which to do it, but we don't have to strive alone. And there is nothing but good in distributing the responsibilities cooperatively in the efforts and sharing credit for the productive and meaningful work thereby undertaking, working together as a team, as a community, sharing the load, instead of trying to take the burden of the whole world on your shoulders, which is tempting, but too much for even a god, perhaps. Maybe that's why he made us, if he did. If he is he. If he exists. What shall I do with the fact of aging? Replace the potential of my youth with the accomplishments of my maturity. A life lived thoroughly justifies its own limitations. A life lived thoroughly justifies its own limitations. That's how we get by the limitation of being, as discussed in Rule 12. The young man with nothing has his possibility to set against the accomplishments of his elders. That is the gift of youth. And the gift of maturity and age is partly wisdom. It is not mutually inclusive. You can have age, but not necessarily have wisdom. What shall I do with my infant's death? Hold my other loved ones and heal their pain. It is necessary to be strong in the face of death because death is intrinsic to life. It is for this reason that I tell my students, aim to be the person at your father's funeral that everyone in their grief and misery can rely on. That's a worthy and noble ambition, strength in the face of adversity. That is very different from the wish for a life free of trouble. What shall I do in the next dire moment? Focus my attention on the next right move. The flood is coming. Pain is coming. Economic collapse is coming. War is coming. The flood is always coming. The apocalypse is always upon us. That's why the story of Noah is archetypical. It doesn't matter if you don't believe in the stories. These stories in the Bible, in the Quran, whatever you read biblically and religiously, these are archetypical stories that we relate to through our own being. Things fall apart. We stress that in the discussion of Rule 10, and the center cannot hold. When everything has become chaotic and uncertain, all that remains to guide you might be the character you constructed previously by aiming up and concentrating on the moment at hand. If you have failed in that, you will fail in the moment of crisis, and then God help you. Because if you have not built a character that can guide you during those tough moments, then those tough moments will overcome you. The heightened knowledge of fragility and mortality produced by death can terrify, embitter, and separate. It can also awaken, and it usually does. The death of a loved one or someone you care about awakens deeply. It can remind those who grieve not to take the people who love them for granted. Once I did some chilling calculations regarding my parents who are in their 80s. I see my mum and dad about twice a year. We generally spend several weeks together. We talk on the phone in between visits, but the life expectancy of people in their 80s is under 10 years. That means I am likely to see my parents, if I am fortunate, fewer than 20 more times. If your parents are over 80, you're likely only going to see them less than 20 more times. That's if you visit, especially if you live in a different state or country. That's a terrible thing to know, but knowing it puts a stop to making those opportunities for granted. If you live out of home, calculate how many times that you see your parents. Be honest. Once a week? Once a month? Maybe you see them once a month. That's 12 months a year. Maybe your parents are in the 50s or 60s. You might only see your parents a couple of dozen more times. Especially if your parents are obese, they smoke, they have underlying medical conditions. Death's coming for all of us. But I'm still gonna fight it. Let me do the calculations on my grandmother. Let's say 18 to 30 more visits I may get to see of my grandmother, who is 87. If she lives till 90, if I visit her every 4 to 8 weeks. And that's being generous, being 16 to 30 times. It's not a lot. It's not a lot. There's 30 days in a month. 30 passes every month. Do the calculations. What shall I say to a faithless brother? The king of the damned is a poor judge of being. It is my firm belief that the best way to fix the world is to fix yourself. There's plenty to do right here where you are. After all, your specific personal faults detrimentally affect the world. Your conscious, voluntary sins make things worse than they have to be. Your action, inertia, and cynicism removes from the world that part of you that could learn to quell suffering and make peace. That's not good. There are endless reasons to despair the world and to become angry, resentful, and seek revenge. Failure to make the proper sacrifices, failure to reveal yourself, failure to live and tell the truth, all that weakens you. In that weakened state, you will be unable to thrive in the world, and you will be no benefit to yourself or others. You will fail and suffer stupidly. That will corrupt your soul. How could it be otherwise? Life is hard enough when it's going well, but when it's going badly? And I have learnt through painful experiences that nothing is going so badly that it can't be made worse. That is why hell is a bottomless pit. And that is why you need to be the person at your father or mother's funeral that people can rely on. Because they are in a bottomless pit. And they're just looking for a hand to grab. And you can be that hand to grab. To suffer terribly, to know yourself as the cause, that is hell. And once in hell, it is very easy to curse being itself, and no wonder, but it's justifiable. And that's why the king of the damned is a poor judge of being. How do you build yourself up into something onto whom you can rely in the best of times and the worst, in peace and in war? How do you build yourself the kind of character that will not ally itself in its suffering and misery with all the dwell in hell? The questions and the answers continued, all pertinent in one way or another to the rules I have outlined in this book, and I have analyzed every single one of them on this channel. So, what shall I do to strengthen my spirit? Do not tell lies, or do not do what you despise. What shall I do to enable my body? Use it only in the service of my soul. What shall I do with the most difficult questions? Consider them the gateway to the path of life, as we have done here. What shall I do with the poor man's plight? Strive through right example to lift his broken heart. So be the example, be the light. What shall I do when the great crowd beckons? Stand tall and utter my broken truths, as we have done and I have done here. And that was that. That's what we do with our pen of light. In closing, officially, of 12 Rules for Life. I hope that my writings has proved useful to you. I hope that it revealed things you knew that you did not know you knew. I hope the ancient wisdom I discussed provides you with strength. I hope it brightened the sparks within you. I hope it can straighten up, sort your family, and bring peace and prosperity to your community. I hope in accordance with Rule 11, do not bother children that are skateboarding, that you strengthen and encourage those who are committed to your care instead of protecting them to the point of weakness. I wish you all the best and hope that you can wish the best for others. And to echo Peterson's closing statement, I hope my illumination of his ideas and all these ideas I discuss here in my writings, in my videos, have demonstrated a similar path for you. Now the question is on you. What will you write with your pen of light?